So you're ready for a CMO, but can't quite afford one. Fractional leadership in marketing may be the answer. Let's learn how to find the right person for your organization in this episode of Closing Time. Thanks for tuning into Closing Time, the show for go-to-market leaders. I'm Val Riley, head of marketing for Unbounce, Insightly, and LeadsRx. Today, I'm joined by Andrew Dod. He's a SaaS CMO, owner of QMark Marketing Consultancy, and a fractional CMO. Welcome to our show, Andrew.
Great to see you again, Val.
Yep. P.S. Andrew was my CMO back in the day, so it's always nice to see a familiar face. Andrew, the data shows that the CMO role is the shortest tenured role in the C-suite. And it's so easy to correlate that with the fact that there is a ton of risk when you're hiring one. Let's talk about the ways this role can be filled.
So typically, the CMO role is one of the significant roles on a full C-suite. And larger companies can afford the full boat of the salary and the bonuses and the equity for a full-time CMO. That ranges anywhere from 190 to 250 and up for larger, more successful companies, and probably 2x that for bonuses and equity is in addition to that. So you're talking about a pretty significant investment. A lot of companies who can't afford that full ride, if you will, don't have enough money to pay for somebody with 20 or 30 or 40 years experience. Will either hire a part-time CMO who might have 20 years experience but only work 20 hours a week. Or they might hire a fractional CMO who has, a lot of seasoned tenure, a lot of experience with leadership and so forth. And they might work 1 week a month, so 40 hours a month in total. And that's pretty much what I've been doing on and off since 2006, is the fractional role. And I've gone full time a few times when the opportunity arose.
Okay, so for the purposes of today's discussion, let's take full time out of the equation. Because if an organization has the budget for that, they can probably hire a firm to guide them through that hire, and they might not need to hear from us. But let's dig into fractional, because I really do feel like it's a great middle ground. So in your experience, how many clients would a fractional CMO likely have at one time?
Yeah, the ideal would be, fully utilized would be anywhere between 4 and 5 clients. Any more than that, and that's for a full boat, full ride fractional CMO. I would say 4 is optimal. You can, with a little extra time, you can handle 5. And it depends on the mix. I've been a fractional CMO for a $2 million company and a $2 billion company. So there's us, with no marketing staff on the smaller company and 150 marketing and communication staff in 90 countries on the other hand. So you're talking about significant differences in time dedication based upon the type of client, how large they are, and time zones and things of that nature.
So in contrast, if you were to say a part-time CMO, would you think that person maybe just works for one company, maybe 20 hours a week, and just doesn't want a full-time role? Would that be the distinction?
Yeah, that's primarily the distinction, yes.
So let's say a firm is selecting a fractional CMO. Can you talk about leadership versus execution? Because I think that as marketers in general and marketing leaders in general, we sometimes get caught in that. But in a fractional situation, it feels like there'd be expectations around it.
Yeah, there are. So in smaller companies, the first marketing hire is usually a director level. And then expand from there. They'll either hire somebody like a marketing manager to go along with that person. And then they get gradually, as they grow, they'll get into more specific skill sets. So those who are very good at execution on digital marketing, those who are in charge of print, those who are running the HubSpot, things of that nature. You start to get more specific and get deeper. When you're looking at hiring a fractional CMO, you need to understand where you are in life cycle. If you've got one or two or three people who are already there, you're going to be looking for somebody who's going to complement that skill set. So if you don't have the content creator, you don't have the creative genius, you're going to want to look for a CMO who either has that skill set in their quiver or is able to bring people to that marketing team. On the other hand, if as I came into your organization, but yours was a full-time gig, there were 36 people there in the marketing and sales development team. And in that case, you need somebody who's not just good at execution, you need somebody who understands how to work with people, how to lead people, how to grow the team in a way that makes them more efficient, allows them to develop themselves more. So when you're hiring a CMO, make sure you're picking the right person for the right environment. In my case, I'm very heavily into strategy and content creation. And also I do a fair bit of execution myself. But the teams that I come into usually have, like when I inherited you as a great content director, and then had other people who were running pay-per-click and dealing with, the website and design, development, SEO, all of that. You really want to pick the right leader to be able to manage all of those skill sets.
So I've heard terminology about, you need a marketer that is horizontal or vertical. That kind of fits into what you were just describing?
Yes. So I look at CMOs in two different ways. The horizontal CMO is at all elements across the marketing continuum. And I would put myself in that category where I start with strategy and can go all the way down to rolling up my sleeves and getting into the dirt on very specific elements of marketing programs and execution. The other type of person is a vertical CMO who might have specific expertise in a specific area, like, for example, being an Insightly expert or having expertise in pay-per-click or search engine optimization and so forth. So an organization really needs to think when they're looking at or interviewing potential fractional CMOs, whether they need a horizontal one or a vertical one to supplement the skills and to fill the gaps that exist on their current team.
Let's keep on that same note and talk about the size of an organization. The size matters, right? So are there fractional CMOs who maybe specialize in different stages, like if you're pre-revenue up to 10 million, et cetera? And if so, can you talk about how the role changes based on those stages?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm currently working with another organization that's pre-revenue. They have not announced yet. And that requires a strategic thinker because you're building your strategic plan, your strategic marketing plan. You're figuring out what types of people you're going to need on your teams. You're interviewing folks. So you need somebody who's been there and done that before. So pre-revenue, you need somebody who is a horizontal player. Can really come out with everything soup to nuts to get the company off the ground. Most of my clients end up being in the sub $50 million range in terms of revenue. And in a lot of cases, those companies will need me less for strategy because they're already an ongoing concern, but more for message development, message tweaking. They've got a new product that's coming out. How are we going to launch it? And things of that type. But there aren't a lot of fractional CMOs in a fractional role for a company, in a true fractional role, meaning 40 hours a month for companies that are, over $100 million. That would be, I would consider, very uncommon.
And also, depending on what stage you're at, right, it's talking about who you're answering to, right? It's much different to answer to a founder or a leadership team versus a board.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. But when and you and I know what that feels like. When you're dealing with board members, you're going to need somebody with 20 to 35 years experience to be able to sit and really have the gravitas to make sure that everyone understands where the company is currently, where you're seeking to take it, and when. Here's where setting expectations are very important, how long it's going to take. You know, we all have the attention span of a Instagram story these days, and so do CEOs when they're tired of their CMO. You know, we're all looking for immediate gratification and immediate increase in leads, immediate increase in conversions. And fundamentally, that's not always possible. There are a lot of reasons why a CMO may or may not be successful. And it's not entirely on him or her, the success or the speed with which that success can happen.
Boy, don't I know that. So let's talk money. What's a reasonable budget to have in mind if you're hiring a fractional CMO? Would it be a function of the marketing budget, or in some cases are fractional CMOs often asked to, be paid tied to performance?
That's not uncommon. I see that quite often. And then there are multiple different incentives in terms of, we're going to buy 40 hours of your time, but if you want to put in extra time, we'll give you some spiffs if you're able to accomplish X goals or achieve these particular KPIs. I would say if you're looking for somebody who has 20 to more years experience and has led teams before, you've got a team of people, you're going to be looking at a minimum of $7,500 a month. Which is still not a lot of money when you're talking about somebody who has that much experience, up to $12,500 a month, or maybe in some cases, if it's a larger company and you're dealing with international travel, it might be $15,000 a month. But that's, I think, an accurate number to at least ballpark what you're going to be looking at.
All right, let's spin it around. So we've talked about how companies can hire a fractional CMO. What about the folks out there who might want to become a fractional CMO? What advice would you give them, and what kind of person might be a good fit?
Okay, you have to be an extrovert, number one, because you're going to be bouncing from company to company, which some may view as a negative, but I view it as a positive because I'm able to bring learnings and experience in one company or one other industry to someone over here who may not have that experience or would not have had that exposure otherwise. You've got to be an extrovert. You've got to be a team builder. You've got to be somebody who believes that politics inside of your marketing team is totally unacceptable. You've got to be somebody who's willing to put in the time to help your teams professionally develop, because you're not always going to be there. Longevity of these engagements can range pretty significantly from a few months to, in my case, I have one client that's going on 8 years now. So, or 7 years. So there's a pretty significant difference in terms of what you should be looking at as you're considering becoming a fractional CMO, but you've got to be comfortable with quick movements, sharp turns. I mean, it's a little bit like being a snow skier that slalom. You've got to be able to go back and forth, and not lose beat.
Yeah, I imagine that's a huge challenge, that context switching. You could be taking a call for one client and then turn around and take a call for another one. So yes. Really keeping your ducks in a row, right?
Yeah, if you're an I individual, if you're more vertical than you are horizontal, and you like to go deep into a company or a product, then becoming a fractional CMO is probably not for you. You probably don't have the right personality to bounce back and forth, cut left and right very quickly, because that's what it really requires that.
Awesome. Okay. Well, anybody out there, hopefully we've inspired you. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today on Closing Time.
Great to see you again, Val.
Yeah. And thanks to everybody out there for tuning in. Remember, you want to sign up for the Closing Time newsletter to get the show delivered right to your inbox. Just click the link in the show notes below, and we will see you next week.